It all started during what should have been a routine live segment, the kind of casual, unscripted moment that fans love because it feels real. But this time, Evelyn wasn't in the mood for smiles and polite conversation. According to the chatter spreading online, she locked eyes with Chantel mid-sentence and her entire energy shifted. Gone was the playful tone, replaced by something sharper, heavier. Then came the words that froze the room, a warning loud enough for the mics. To catch that if Chantal kept pushing, Evelyn would expose secrets that no one's ready to hear. The set went silent, hosts exchanged nervous glances, and the live chat exploded with comments flying in faster than anyone could read. Viewers claimed they could see Chantel's smile falter for just a second before she regained her composure. But that flicker was all it took for speculation to ignite. What kind of secrets could Evelyn possibly be talking about? Why say it here, in front of everyone, with the cameras rolling? And most importantly, was this a heat-of-the-moment outburst? Or a calculated move to put Chantal on notice in the most public way possible? Whatever it was, it's the moment fans can't stop replaying. Not began like any other lighthearted live stream. The kind of behind-the-scenes treat fans look forward to because it promises easy banter. A few teases about upcoming drama, and maybe even a couple of candid moments that feel more real than the edited episodes. The set had been buzzing that morning, makeup artists darting between chairs, sound techs adjusting mics, stylists fussing over final touches. In the corner, Chantal was leaning back in her seat, scrolling through her phone, occasionally lifting her head to smile or laugh at something one of the crew members said. Evelyn sat 2 chairs down, chatting casually with an audience member who'd been invited to watch the taping. The first 20 minutes were as smooth as any other. Questions came in from the live chat, most of them harmless favorite memories. From filming who's the funniest cast member off camera and the inevitable what's your skincare routine queries. Both women answered with practiced ease, exchanging playful digs that made viewers spam the heart emojis in the corner of the screen. Nothing hinted at what was about to unfold. Then a question popped up that shifted the air ever so slightly. Are you and Chantal on good terms now? It was typed casually in the chat, but for reasons only Evelyn and Chantal seemed to understand. It landed like a stone in still water. Evelyn's smile froze for half a second before she let out a short laugh. She glanced at Chantal, who returned the look with a perfectly polite smile. But there was something behind Chantal's eyes, not irritation exactly, but an alertness, like she knew this was a turning point in the conversation. Instead of answering right away, Evelyn reached for her water, took a slow sip, and then leaned toward her mic. Depends on what you mean by good terms, she said, her voice light but her gaze locked on Chantal. The hosts chuckled awkwardly, trying to keep the moment breezy, but the viewers noticed. The chat began moving. Faster, questions piling in. Wait, what does that mean? Spill? Oh no, this is about to get messy. Chantel kept her composure, tilting her head just slightly. Good terms, she repeated, as if testing the phrase, we're civil. It was a simple word, but her tone made it sound like there was a lot packed inside it. And then Evelyn leaned forward, elbows on the table, and said the words that made the entire set go still. If she keeps pushing me, she said clearly, I'll tell everyone exactly what she doesn't want them to know. For a moment, it didn't feel real. The studio audience went silent, some with their mouths literally hanging open. Of the producers just off-camera raised his hand slightly, signaling to cut to a break, but the control room didn't move fast enough. The live feed kept rolling, and thousands of viewers at home were now typing so fast the chat was unreadable. Chantal's smile didn't vanish, but it shifted into something tighter, more deliberate. What are you talking about? She asked, her tone even but laced with a quiet challenge. Evelyn didn't flinch. You know exactly what I'm talking about? The way Evelyn said it, calm, measured, without raising her voice, made it even heavier. It wasn't a threat tossed out in anger. It was a statement of intent, the kind that says, "I will do this and you will regret it." In the control room, the director muttered to someone, "Do we cut? Do we write it out?" But the delay in making a decision meant the moment stayed live. Fans were already clipping the exchange on their phones and posting it to social media before the crew had time to breathe. From where Jackie sat off to the side, she didn't intervene. She simply watched, one eyebrow raised, her eyes flicking between the two women. Those who know Jackie say she can read a room better than anyone, and the way she stayed quiet was telling. Some believed she was letting the tension play out too. See who would make the next move. Chantel, still looking at Evelyn, leaned forward slightly. "If you think you've got something to say about me," she said, "you should just say it." A sharp laugh escaped Evelyn, not one of amusement, but of disbelief. "Trust me," she said. "It's not something you want out there." She sat back in her chair, crossing her legs, her eyes never leaving Chantel's. It was the kind of silence after that where you can hear the smallest sounds, the faint hum of the lights. A pen dropping somewhere backstage, the soft murmur of someone in the audience whispering, "Oh my God." The hosts tried to move on, pulling up another question from the chat, but no one in the room was paying attention anymore. The energy had shifted completely, the easy flow of conversation replaced with a charged undercurrent. Evelyn had made it clear she was holding something, okay? And she wasn't afraid to use it. When the live stream finally cut to a pre-recorded segment, the onset stillness cracked. Evelyn stood up without a word, heading toward the back of the studio with one of the producers in tow. Chantel remained in her seat, scrolling her phone as if nothing had happened. But the stiffness in her shoulders betrayed her calm facade. Backstage, the whispers were immediate. One crew member claimed they overheard Evelyn saying to someone, "She thinks no one will believe me, but I have proof." Another said Chantal muttered to her stylist, "If she wants to play this game, she better be ready." The break ended and both women returned to their seats. But the temperature in the room hadn't cooled. The rest of the live stream was stiff, polite, and forced. The kind of politeness that's less about being cordial and more about holding back. Every glance, every pause, every word felt loaded, as if either one could reignite the spark at any moment. And yet, perhaps the most telling part of the entire exchange wasn't what was said during the live stream, but what happened in the hours afterward. Clips of the confrontation were everywhere online within minutes, each one with its own dramatic caption. "Evelyn goes nuclear," one fan account posted. "Chantal stays calm but deadly," another wrote. Hashtags formed instantly. Theories multiplied, and by the time the sun set, the argument had become the headline in every reality gossip circle. But the real question wasn't what had been said, it was what hadn't. Because when someone like Evelyn hints at having a dark secret about someone else, it's never just talk. It's a countdown, and everyone watching knew it. The moment the live stream ended, the studio might as well have been two separate worlds under one roof. On one side, a low hum of crew voices, nervous and quick, filling the air as people moved cables, shifted lights, pretended not to be watching the two women who had just turned a casual segment into a national talking point. On the other side, there was a silence so sharp you could hear the rustle of a script page from across the room. Chantal sat at the far end of the table, scrolling through her phone. Though anyone paying attention could see she wasn't really reading anything. Evelyn had disappeared backstage, trailed by a producer whose face carried the kind of tight-lipped focus that only shows up when damage control is being calculated in real time. Backstage. That damage control meeting was not going smoothly. Evelyn was pacing slowly, her heels clicking against the polished floor, her hands moving just enough to suggest she was explaining herself, or perhaps defending herself, to the producer. "I didn't say anything untrue," she murmured, at one point her voice low but clipped. "I didn't even say what it was." The producer, shifting his weight from foot to foot, replied quietly, "The problem isn't what you said, it's how you said it and when." But Evelyn wasn't the type to walk back her words once they were out in the open. She stopped pacing, looked directly at him, and said, "I've been holding on to this for too long. Maybe it's time." While that conversation unfolded, Chantel was joined by one of her closest allies on set, a fellow cast member who had been watching the confrontation from just off camera. She sat down beside her, leaning in so their conversation could be drowned out by the background chatter. "What do you think she's going to do?" the friend asked. Chantal didn't look up from her phone. "Bluff," she replied. "She likes to feel like she's got power over people. That's her game." Still, her jaw was set a little tighter than usual, her voice a little lower. The friend studied her for a moment before saying softly, "And if she's not bluffing?" Chantal finally looked up, her eyes steady. "Then she should be ready for what I've got too. By early evening, the moment had left the studio and taken on a life of its own online. The clip had been reposted thousands of times, edited into slow-motion reaction videos, paired with dramatic background music and analyzed by self-proclaimed body language experts on TikTok. One viral breakdown paused at the exact moment Evelyn leaned in and claimed she had a secret, overlaying text that read, "Look at Chantel's micro-expression here. Pure panic." Another account posted side-by-side shots of Chantel's reaction and Jackie's unreadable stare from across the set, captioned, "Jackie knows." That caption wasn't random. Jackie had been unusually quiet during the whole incident, both on set and afterward, and for someone as known for her opinions as she was, that silence was unsettling. A crew member later claimed that Jackie had been pulled into a private conversation with one of the executive producers after the live stream ended. They wanted to know if she thought Evelyn would actually say it, the source said. Didn't give them a straight answer. She just smiled and said, "Depends on how much she's had to drink." The next morning, when filming resumed, there was no easing into the day. The moment Chantal walked into the makeup room, conversations dropped. She greeted the stylist as usual, but didn't acknowledge the stares. Minutes later, Evelyn arrived, carrying her coffee like it was a shield, her eyes flicking briefly toward Chantal before she took a seat on the opposite side of the room. The unspoken rule seemed to be that they wouldn't speak unless it was. For the cameras during the first scene, the tension was almost unbearable. They were seated at the same table for a group discussion, the kind where cast members are supposed to share updates about their lives. Whenever Chantel spoke, Evelyn's gaze lingered on her just a moment too long, the faintest smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. When it was Evelyn's turn to talk, Chantel's expression didn't change. She kept her face perfectly neutral, but her foot tapped steadily under the table, a small signal to anyone who knew her that she was holding back words. Between takes, whispers spread like wildfire. One makeup artist told another that she'd overheard Evelyn telling a crew member, "Maybe I should just do it on air. Give them the full story." Another claimed Chantal had been on the phone late the night before, pacing in her trailer and saying, "She doesn't have anything that can hurt me. She only thinks she does." Outside of the set, the online frenzy was only growing. One gossip blogger posted a blind item that didn't name names but left little to the imagination. It spoke of two high-profile cast members, one threatening to reveal information about the other that could permanently change public opinion. Within an hour, fans had flooded the comments with their guesses, most of them landing squarely on Evelyn and Chantel. Lunchtime. That day brought one of the most talked about off-camera moments. Evelyn was sitting with two other cast members, her laughter ringing out a little too loud when Chantal walked by on her way to the catering table. Evelyn stopped mid-sentence, turned in her seat, and said clearly enough for everyone nearby to hear, "Enjoy your lunch while you still can." There was no obvious malice in her tone, but the pause after the sentence made the implication unmistakable. Chantel didn't slow down, didn't turn. But the set was buzzing for the rest of the afternoon about that one remark. By the end of the day, producers were scrambling to keep the situation from boiling over before the cameras could capture it. in a way that would make sense to the audience. One executive quietly told a crew member, "If she's going to drop this, we need it on tape, and we need it clean." That sentiment only added to the speculation that the show might actually be encouraging the tension, hoping it would lead to a ratings spike. But those who knew the women personally said, this wasn't a storyline, it was personal. And it had been building long before the cameras ever caught it. They spoke of past slights, moments that never made it to air, and private conversations where both had accused the other of crossing lines. Whatever Evelyn was holding over Chantel, it was tied to something real enough that neither seemed willing to fully let it go. And in the quiet moments, when the cameras stopped rolling and the crew started packing up, that truth hung heavier than ever. Chantal stayed behind in the makeup chair, phone in hand, scrolling slowly, her face unreadable. Evelyn left first, her heels clicking against the tile, her shoulders back, her head high, like someone already rehearsing her next move. Every person on that set could feel it. The real explosion hadn't happened yet. But it was coming, and when it did, there'd be no way to clean it up. By the third day, the situation had turned into a maze of half answers and sharpened glances, and every corridor felt like it was wired for confession. Producers were shuffling the call sheet, not because of logistics, but because nobody wanted a blow up in the wrong place at the wrong time. The absurd part was how normal everything looked on the surface. Fresh powder on cheekbones, curling, irons hissing, coffee lids popping while under it. Everyone carried the same low, humming dread. The fans were louder than ever, splitting into camps that read like rival fan clubs. Some swore Evelyn was bluffing. Others were certain Chantal had finally met her match. And a quiet third group insisted both women were holding something the other didn't want aired. The only thing people agreed on was that it couldn't stay sealed forever. New threads started when a short voicemail clip landed in a blogger's inbox. 31 seconds of hushed anger. A woman saying, "You don't get to weaponize my past," and another voice answering, "Then stop pretending that none of it happened." Nobody could verify the voices, but the cadence sounded familiar enough to throw gasoline on the discourse. Comments stacked up with side-by-side guesses and frame-grab comparisons like it was a crime scene. Whether it was real or stitched together didn't matter. It fit the mood too perfectly to ignore in set. A scheduled roundtable scene placed Evelyn and Chantal at opposite ends of the couch, with Jackie angled between them like a quiet sentry. The prompt was innocuous, favorite moments from the season, but the words came out heavy, dipped in subtext. When it was Chantal's turn, she smiled softly and thanked the fans for not believing everything they read. A couple of beats later, Evelyn adjusted her mic and said, "Truth has a way of coming through, even when you bury it under charm." The room didn't breathe for a second. A producer's pen clicked twice in the dark. Someone coughed, like a stage direction between takes. A small exchange near the craft table turned into a low-grade earthquake. A friend pulled Chantal aside and whispered, "She's saying she'll do it live. Not the next episode, this week." Chantal's response was steady. "Let her go live. I'm not the one scared of the comments." The friend hesitated, then added, "It won't just be about you." That line changed the temperature. Chantal's posture straightened, less defiant, more calculating. Like she'd just seen the shape of a larger fight. Evelyn, meanwhile, disappeared into a conference room with two producers. A sound ope, passing by with a boom stand, caught only a slice. Evelyn saying, "If I talk, I'm talking about me too. I'm not hiding behind anyone." That twist cut through the gossip like a new blade. The title everyone had been tossing around, the idea that she'd threatened to expose her own dark secrets to frame the bigger picture, suddenly sounded less like a headline and more like a live option. Fans grabbed the idea instantly. She wasn't just threatening to air Chantal out. She was threatening to risk herself to make the story unignorable. First real crack appeared during rehearsal for a charity panel scene. While the crew adjusted lights, Chantal approached Evelyn at the edge of the stage. No theatrics, Just a quiet line dropped between them. "You don't have to burn yourself to make a point." Evelyn didn't smile. "Sometimes you have to, or they keep pretending it was just smoke." The eye contact held until a stage manager called for places, and both women turned away as if nothing had passed it online. The intrigue spun into mini investigations. An old interview resurfaced where Evelyn deflected a question about a past friendship with a quick laugh and a change of subject. Now, frozen in a clip and slowed down, that deflection looked like a breadcrumb. A separate fan account posted a timeline graphic mapping years of rumored alliances and fallouts, stitching them together into something that felt uncomfortably coherent, buried in the threads. A smaller account claimed to have seen proof that part of Evelyn's threat involved admitting to something she'd shut down publicly before a lapse. It's a bad choice. A debt paid in private. True, it would turn the narrative from a petty squabble into an offered confession that afternoon. An impromptu meeting pulled a handful of cast and producers into a glass-walled office. The scene outside looked like a collage of anxious faces pretending to check schedules. Inside, the tone was measured. A producer laid it out. "If there's going to be a reveal, it has to be on a controlled segment, not a chaotic live." Evelyn listened, arms folded, then said, "You want me to say it clean so you can package it? I'm not packaging my life." Someone tried to soften it, suggesting a recorded sit-down with time to breathe. Evelyn's reply was flat. "Breathing is how this stayed buried." The meeting ended without a plan, which meant there was a plan forming that nobody could steer. The split among the cast grew palpable. One group, protective of Chantel, framed Evelyn's brinkmanship as vindictive grandstanding. Another, protective of Evelyn, framed it as a long-delayed truth-telling. In the middle, a few tried to keep peace by suggesting a private mediation. A message went around proposing a quiet sit-down in a neutral location. No cameras, no managers. Evelyn's response returned first. "Happy to talk if she wants to hear instead of perform." Chantal's response followed an hour later. "Happy to listen if she's not threatening an audience with my name." Both answers sounded reasonable and impossible at the same time, just as the mediation idea began to flicker out. A second voicemail leak surfaced, clearer, longer, and even messier. A woman said you forgave me, and the other shot back, "Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting the cost." That line tore through the fanbase like a siren. Suddenly, people were talking about debts that weren't financial, about help offered and help denied, about moments where loyalty didn't look neat on paper. Some believed it pointed to a private favor that had saved face during a past scandal. Others argued it referenced a personal betrayal that never made it to air. The ambiguity was brutal and effective. Back on set, a quiet rehearsal scene broke. When a lamp flickered, a trivial tech hiccup that felt like an omen. While electricians adjusted the rig, Chantal stood alone by the edge of the seating area, staring at the empty rows as if trying to picture the audience that would be watching if this went live. Evelyn stepped up beside her without looking. "You could have told the truth then," Evelyn said softly. "You could have told it too," Chantal answered. The two of them remained there, shoulder to shoulder, not touching, listening to the ladder scrape metal somewhere in the rafters. When the lights came back strong, they parted like magnets flipped the other way. That evening, a new rumor swirled. An exclusive live stream was being lined up, not through the network's channel, but on a personal account with more freedom and less oversight. Screenshots of a scheduled countdown began to circulate, a grainy cropping of a profile picture, a time, a vague caption, "Let's talk about the cost of silence." Within minutes, skeptical fans called it fake. Within an hour, others found a mirrored countdown on a secondary page that looked too convincing to dismiss. The idea that the reveal might happen outside the neatly framed studio sent producers into frantic calls and sent the cast into group chats that kept pinging until midnight. While that countdown ticked somewhere online, a smaller, quieter twist unfolded. A veteran crew member who'd been around for every era of conflict posted a simple line on a private account. Sometimes the truth hurts less than the years spent avoiding it. It wasn't attached to anyone, but it read like a permission slip to stop playing polite. People screenshotted it, shared it, stamped it onto the larger narrative like a wax seal on a letter. No one wanted to open Evelyn's car arrived early the next morning. She walked in with a tote bag instead of her usual tiny clutch, a detail that felt like a sentence. Inside the bag, a folder peeked out, dog-geared and thick, the kind of folder that says, "I kept records." A makeup artist pretending to sort. Brushes glanced at the folder and then at Chantal, whose gaze had already found it. Neither woman blinked. Rehearsal stalled again, this time for sound checks. In the lull, Jackie approached, the unofficial barometer of whether something was about to break. She spoke quietly, first to Chantal, then to Evelyn. And whatever she said was almost identical. You can't unsay a live admission. Chantal nodded once. Evelyn didn't. The line between caution and defiance had never looked thinner. Midday, the studio audience was ushered in for a taped segment, unaware they might be seated inches from a fuse. The host smiled through the intro, the band hit its cues, and the cameras found their marks. The topic on the cards was innocuous. Again, growth, lessons, the usual sweep of glossy reflection. When the question reached Evelyn, she looked down at the table for a long beat, and then up at the lights as if checking their temperature. She said, "Growth means telling the truth about yourself, even when it makes you the villain in your own story." A murmur rippled through the seats. The host leaned in, sensing a moment that could tilt his story. Chantel's eyes didn't leave Evelyn's face. She answered the follow-up with something measured. Something about empathy and how people love redemption arcs until the person redeeming themselves isn't the one they favor. The exchange was pointed but not explosive, clean enough to air, charged enough to signal the aftershock still to come. Somewhere beyond the studio, that countdown continued, its silent march toward the hour everyone was pretending not to watch as the segment wrapped. Applause rolled through on cue, and the red lights above the cameras winked into rest. In the hush that follows a take, Evelyn slid her tote closer and laid a hand over the folder as if steadying it for the next move. Chantel exhaled once, the kind of breath you take when you know you're stepping into a room you can't leave. Unchanged. Nobody said the words that would make it official. Had to. If the threat was to expose her own dark secrets, to tell the larger story, the door was open, and both women were standing in the frame. Knowing the walk through it would be the point of no return. The following day began with a strange quiet. The kind that doesn't feel like peace, but like the pause before something loud. Crew members moved slower, as if the air itself was heavy. And every conversation dropped an octave when either Evelyn or Chantal walked by. Word had spread that the countdown on that personal account was now hours away, not days. And that it hadn't been deleted despite producers' frantic attempts to confirm its legitimacy. The mystery was whether Evelyn was behind it directly, or if someone close to her was moving the pieces on her behalf. Either way, the implication was the same. The reveal was on a collision course with reality. Jackie hovered more than usual, her eyes darting between the two women as though she could predict when one might finally detonate. She had always been the one to control tempo in tense moments, but this was different. This wasn't a single argument to mediate. This was a layered history threatening to unravel in real time. She cornered Chantal near the wardrobe racks, her voice low but urgent. "She says what she's planning. It's not just you on the line. You understand that?" Chantal's response was deliberate. "I understand that she's using me as her stage to confess something she's been too scared to admit." Jackie's lips tightened, like she wanted to argue but knew there was no clean path forward. Evelyn, in another part of the set, was in deep conversation with a stylist, her expression unreadable. The stylist later whispered to a lighting tech that Evelyn had been talking about ownership of your own narrative. and how sometimes the only way to win was to tell the part of the story no one could weaponize against you. That line traveled fast, hitting the fan pages before lunch, reframed as Evelyn ready to confess her own sins live. Whether or not she'd actually said it like that didn't matter. The fans believed it fit the arc. By midday, the studio was hosting a promo shoot which required the cast to sit for joint interviews. The tension was so tangible it could have been lit like a prop in one session. Chantel was asked a generic question about the season's challenges. Her answer started polished but veered sharply when she said, "You learn a lot about trust when someone threatens to tell your story while rewriting their own." Evelyn, seated beside her, didn't flinch. Instead, she looked directly at the camera and said, "Sometimes rewriting is the only way to correct a lie." The production assistant behind the lens almost dropped their clipboard. Off-camera, alliances were shifting at speed. A couple of castmates who had been neutral started to distance themselves from Chantal. Not because they didn't believe her, but because they feared being collateral damage in whatever Evelyn was about to unleash. Others doubled down in their support, encouraging Chantal to get ahead of it by revealing her side first. Chantal brushed that off with a flat, "I don't negotiate with threats." Still, her phone barely left her hand, notifications lighting up every few seconds as speculations spiraled online. Then came the rehearsal for a group discussion scene meant to feel lighthearted. It lasted 3 minutes before Evelyn casually dropped, "It's funny how people want to talk about sisterhood when they've been hiding the kind of truths that would make the room go silent." The room did go silent. Chantal stared at her, jaw tight, before turning away as if refusing to give the moment oxygen. That clip, though never meant to air, somehow leaked as a muffled audio snippet by evening. Within hours, hashtags pairing their names with the word secrets trended in 3 cities. Later that night, an unplanned meeting took place in the green room. Chantel walked in, followed moments later by Evelyn. No cameras, just the low hum of a vending machine and the faint buzz of stage lights through the walls. "What are you hoping to get out of this?" Chantal asked, voice even. Evelyn sat, crossed her legs, and answered, "The same thing you've always wanted, for people to finally see the truth." Chantal's laugh was short, almost disbelieving. "You mean your truth?" Evelyn didn't blink. Truth doesn't have owners. For a moment, they just sat in the thick air, neither willing to move first. Outside, fans were organizing watch parties for the supposed live stream. Some were calling it the showdown of the year. Others worried it would end careers. Media blogs jumped on the frenzy, running speculative headlines about the dark past Evelyn might reveal and whether Chantel's name would survive the blowback. The frenzy made it impossible for either woman to step back without looking like they'd folded under pressure. As the night wore on, an image began circulating. A blurry shot of what looked like Evelyn sitting in front of a laptop. Her face, half in shadow, a ring light glowing behind her. No one could confirm its timing or origin, but the caption read, "She's ready." For Chantal, the image was confirmation that this was happening, whether she engaged or not. She spent the next hour pacing in her trailer. Friends cycling through with conflicting advice. Go live first, issue a preemptive statement, or stay silent and let Evelyn own whatever storm she created. But silence was growing harder to maintain. Around midnight, Chantal posted a single message to her social account. "Be careful when you open the door to the past. Sometimes it drags you inside." The post exploded with interpretations, some framing it as defiance, others as a warning to Evelyn. Whatever it meant, it added another log to a fire already set to burn by sunrise. The countdown hit its final hours. The crew arrived, to find both women already on set, dressed and made up, as if they'd both decided to face whatever came next on their own terms. There were no greetings, no small talk, just the sound of cameras being rolled into position and producers speaking in clipped, cautious tones. The sense in the air was that no matter how carefully they tried to control the narrative, something irreversible was about to break. And that's where everything stands. a live threat hanging in the air, a countdown that has fans holding their breath, and two women locked in a standoff that feels one move away from shattering into chaos. Maybe Evelyn's words were an empty dare meant to shake Chantel. Maybe they were the opening shot in a battle she's been preparing to fight for years. Either way, the tension has spread far beyond the set, pulling in viewers, friends, and even people who swore they'd never pick a side. The question now isn't just what will be said, it's how everyone will react once it's out there. So, what do you think really lies behind Evelyn's threat? Is she about to reveal something that could change how we see Chantal forever? Or is this just another layer of reality TV mind games? Could Chantal be hiding something? Or is she simply standing her ground against a power play she never invited? Your opinion matters here, and trust me, the cast will see it. If you've been glued to every second of this drama, hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the moment it all comes to light, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Whose truth do you believe? And more importantly, what do you think happens when the countdown finally hits 0?